What's up, y'all? It's Zach from Living Corporate. Now, look, you know what we do. We have authentic conversations about being black and brown in the corporate space. Now, corporate space makes it sound really fancy, right? Like you wearing a suit and a tie. You know, maybe sometimes you have to actually put some lotion on your ankles. That's not what I mean, right? I just mean a place that you actually have to work, right? Living Corporate is a place that amplifies the voices of black and brown people at work, okay? And how do we do that? We do that with authentic conversations with black and brown executives, entrepreneurs, influencers, educators, public servants, creatives, activists, right? And we do that in just like one-on-one conversations. Sometimes we do a 2-on-1, sometimes we do a 3-on-1. Sometimes we have like a, we mix it up. But the point is we're having real talk. And that's why our tagline is what? Real talk in the corporate world. All that being said, y'all know we're having dope conversations every time y'all hear this podcast. And today is no different. Today we're talking to Brian Hampton. Brian is the CEO and founder of ChangeNerd, a company that supports change management practitioners and inspires innovation. Brian, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Zach.
Oh, man, it's not a problem at all, man. Look, I gave a little intro for you, but for those of us who don't know you, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so, I started ChangeNerd. It's primarily a digital learning community. I started it to really bring professionals together because for us who do change management and help organizations adopt new ways of working, we really just tend to be heads down working on our projects. And I wanted to create a way for us to just connect and share best practices. And prior to launching ChangeNerd, I consulted at Deloitte. I also led change management teams at different companies, both private and nonprofit. So I love the field. I'm super passionate about it, and I'm glad to talk about it today.
Yeah, man. And coming from a change background myself, I don't see a lot of black men in the space, right? I don't really see a lot of black folks, period, but I definitely don't see a lot of black men specifically, and just black and brown men in general in the space. Can we talk a little bit about, of all the professions you could have chosen, like what about change management got you?
This is real cool. Nice question. And great question, actually. So I went to college and undergrad for criminal justice, and then soon realized there was no real money behind it. And so I jumped into HR, jumped into the federal government. And at around 2008, 2010, I felt like HR was kind of flat. And then I was introduced to change management because the agency I was at the time, we were implementing PeopleSoft. And so I was formally introduced to change management. And I really couldn't believe this was a full-time job, right? Because it's really around just working with people and helping them, really adopt to new ways of working. And I'm like, wow, people get paid doing this. So I did some research and saw that the pay was decent. And so I jumped into the field. So, I thought at the time, HR was boring and change management seemed to be the new thing. And there's some really strong transferable skill sets from HR to change management. And so I took the leap.
Man, it's 100%. And it's interesting because my career was a little bit the same, right? I think we talked about this off the mic, but I started as an HR manager at Target.
Exactly. Yep.
And then transitioned into org design and just being a specialist, right? And then eventually formed really all the way into change management. And you're absolutely right. A lot of it's transferable, but it's interesting. I think a lot of it isn't because I do agree that oftentimes HR gets a tough rap as just being the benefits folks, right? And kind of helping with ER issues, but really they're just they're almost like the security guards of the company. They don't have a gun. They got a roll of quarters to call the police when it gets really scary. They might have a flashlight so they can look at you while you're doing something wrong, but they don't really have any actual,
Yep.
Come on, man. Yeah. So anyway, okay, cool. So look, we're talking today about building learning communities, right? ChangeNerd is a learning community, like you said at the top. But to start, how would you define a learning community, and what are the benefits of being in a learning community?
Well, quite honestly, the whole theme of this podcast is corporate, corporate living. And if you're in corporate, your organization is more than likely changing, right? It's using and bringing on new technology, new processes, Organizations are trying to be competitive. So all of that activity is happening. And what that means for the individual person is that you have to take ownership of your own journey, your own learning journey. And so the best way to do that is to really tap into some type of social learning community. And that's part of the reason why I created ChangeNerd. There was nothing out there specifically for, professionals who are spend a lot of their time in project management, change management. And so I wanted to create a community for us folks. And what I'm noticing after doing this just for 12 months is that it's extremely beneficial. We got thousands of people in the community, both at the executive level and, the practitioner level. And the people love the community because they can take charge and, tap in whenever they want to tap in. It's LinkedIn on a much smaller scale, and there's beauty in having access to like-minded people. So if you're on a project and you're struggling, you're only a button away or an email away from getting help. And that's what it's all about. And for us, we tend not to have those strong networks when it comes to corporate. And so, I'll be honest with you. I'll share this story. Working at Deloitte was the hardest. And it was fun, but it was extremely difficult, primarily because I didn't have that network. Even tapping into, the African American BRG, it's still tough for us to connect with the right people that we can trust in the corporate atmosphere. And so, you go to work every day and you build a network there, but there's nothing like building an even broader network outside of your organization to give you the confidence you need to be successful.
Man, you're 100% right. And it's interesting, like, as organizations or just as technology continues to grow, like at first the draw of technology and like social networking was size, right? And scope, right? Like you could reach anybody anywhere, and like, big numbers were attractive, right? So if you could say, you say LinkedIn, like millions of people use LinkedIn every day, right? But then like the disconnect is, okay, what does it look like for me to actually touch somebody? Because I don't really need to touch a million people. I only need to touch like 15. So what do I need to do to make sure that I can actually touch those, less than 20 people that I actually need? And so it's just interesting as you see like communities change, or digital communities change and evolve, that, we're noticing that just sizes and everything, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And, building a community around your role or your aspirations professionally, it's an ongoing journey. And what I will say is, here's the major benefit, right? If you got 100 people because you were diligent, and let's say you spent 3 to 6 months really building a community around you or tapping into an existing one, and you now have 100 people that you trust, that you can reach out to. If you get laid off, if you want to go independent and start your own agency, if something bad happens to you, you got 100 people who got your back. And that's what it comes down to. I can't, just in doing this community, ChangeNerd, I can't tell you the amount of people that I've been able to help. So-and-so got laid off. Oh, I know this partner at this firm, right? And there's a trust that's built. And so, submitting your resume becomes more of a, it's something that's happened afterwards, right? Because of trust, that organization is pretty much going to bring you on, right? And so your resume becomes a formality after the fact. And so like that's the beauty of having a network and being tapped into a digital learning platform, or any social learning community that you have.
Yeah, man. It's interesting. You talked about some of your challenges at Deloitte, and like the barrier being you not having that community formally or informally, right? So like, based on your experiences, what advice, like what lessons learned would you be able to share, and kind of what would you be able to give to Black and brown folks today who are looking to build those type of spaces for themselves, for their own professional development?
To be honest with you, it's a journey, and the reality is you don't know what you don't know. Years ago when I was at Deloitte, I don't think I had the right mindset. They hired me for a job, primarily to do deliverables on projects, and that's what I did. But to be successful, there are so many other competencies there. You got to be able to manage up. You got to be able to build relationships. And when it comes to corporate, a lot of times, I know for me and probably for the folks that are listening to this podcast episode, sometimes you may be one of the few Black or brown people in the room. But it's difficult to raise your hand, and it's difficult to bring your perspective without being judged. But over time, with the right experiences, you get really good at it. But honestly, I don't know if there's any advice that I can give to anyone other than go for it, continue to build your network out. But ultimately, it's your journey, and you have to own your own learning process, regardless of what type of leadership development programs you find yourself into. You have to own your own learning. Tapping into a network is beneficial, but just recognize that relationship building and having the ability to build trust with others, those are things that you'll learn along the way.
Man, well, let's do this, man. Let's talk about ChangeNerd, because I do get folks who hit me up, right? I have old colleagues, I have people in different just social networks who hit me up about getting into change management. Let's talk about ChangeNerd, why the name, the journey you got there, and then where people can learn more about it.
Yeah. So it's funny. I knew I wanted to bring I'll tell you this. Me and the team, we were building an app. So we built this nice, sophisticated change management app. And as I was trying to sell it to different companies, I realized that change management teams didn't really have budget for it. So we scrapped it. But I live in the Chicagoland area. I found 6 large companies, all implementing SAP, all struggling at the same point in time. Right. And it was that moment where I realized, wow, I need to build a community because we're just working way too siloed. So I launched the community, and so the community is free to join. And every week I interview a subject matter expert around, and we talk about some area surrounding organizational best practices. And every so often we offer virtual courses, and we also offer in-person events. And so, when people think of ChangeNerd, I want them to think about the learning community, because at the heart, that's what it is. We pay the bills by consulting different companies, but we try to spend the bulk of our time just enriching the learning community.
Well, that's incredible, man. So talk to me about at what point did you realize that ChangeNerd was like, okay, wow, this is something serious. Like, this is an actual. So I'm not going to say it's a movement, because that's mad corny.
It is.
It's mad corny. People always, man. Side note, man. People always talking about it's a movement. It's a movement. It's so many. How is everything moving?
I know. So let me tell you how I knew it was real. Okay. It got real for me when I got an email. I got an email from an HRBP that said, "Hey, Brian, we want to fly you to Boston, and we want you to do a series of workshops for our supply chain leadership." Right. That's when it got real for me. So I replied back. I'm like, do you have budget? And they told me the budget, and via email within literally 5 minutes, we negotiated budget. That's when it got real for me, because what I found out was when you tap into a community, or if you build a community, right, you're automatically building trust with people. Right. And so when they see you, they trust you because you're giving out good insight. You're giving out, you're helping them. And when opportunities pop up, they reach out to you. And so, first it started out as a speaking engagement, right? And I didn't have to give them documents and compete with other firms. They wanted me. That's when I knew. I told my wife, I'm like, honey, this is real money, right? And then the phone calls came, head of IT from this company, head of HR from this company. Brian, we want to get your perspective. Right. And they knew that, I wasn't going to do it for free. And so they came with the budget. And so it's just when you have that network of people, you're able to help people, and they can help you as well. And so, to be honest with you, that's how I knew that this could be something real when I started getting emails of different companies, from different companies that needed my help.
Well, talk to me about what you've been most excited about that ChangeNerd has accomplished, and as you look at 2020, what are you most looking forward to?
When it comes to change management, you have major training companies really trying to control the narrative. You have I won't call out any names here, but you have companies controlling the narrative. What I'm so proud of is with me interviewing different subject matter experts every week, it just opens the opportunity for the narrative to change, right? And so for change management not to become like an academic exercise, and so for people not to be locked into one particular framework, and for more stories and experiences to be told. As we move into 2020, we're going to get a little bit more niche. We're going to have smaller digital communities. So change management in healthcare, change management in nonprofits, change management in financial services. We're going to have digital communities by industry, by specialty, just to give people access to more practical advice. So that's something I'm looking forward to as we move into 2020.
All right, man. Now, look, I wouldn't be a platform if I didn't give you space to actually plug ChangeNerd. So, like, where can we learn more about it? What's the content? What's the information? Of course, we'll have it in the show notes, but go ahead and shout it out right here.
Yeah, so you can dive right into the online community by going to community.changenerd.com. Community.changenerd.com. That will put you right into the community. Go ahead and join. It's totally free, and I look forward to seeing you there.
All right, now look, everybody. Y'all heard him, okay? So y'all driving, you walking, you doing whatever you do. You heard what he said, community.changenerd.com. It'll be in the show notes. And y'all be clicking links. We look at the bit.lys. We see that y'all clicking stuff, but you ain't got to do it. Just you heard me, right? So you heard Brian, you heard Zach. Just go ahead and click that thing. Now, Brian, before we let you get up out of here, any shout outs or parting words?
No, Zach, I love what you're doing. And it's podcasts like this that really help people like us move forward. So I appreciate the effort that you're doing. And if you're listening to this episode, I would encourage you to reach out to me. And hopefully I can be of help to you. And that's pretty much it.
And them air horns is for you and for me, man. I appreciate you, man. I thank you. And I appreciate the work that you're doing, right? You're demystifying change management. You're creating a space for folks who are interested in change management and who are already established change management practitioners to engage, learn, and build. So,
absolutely.
And this is not an ad. So yeah, just shout out to you. Shout out to ChangeNerd. And listen, y'all, this does it for us on the Living Corporate Podcast. Thank you for checking in. Now, look, y'all typically know I kind of put all the ads and stuff, but every now and then I just kind of flex on them. Just a little flex. Sometimes I'll just say, Google us. Just Google Living Corporate. Just look at just Living Corporate, right? We're on everything. We're on all the streaming platforms. We're on Instagram at Living Corporate. We're on Twitter at livingcorp_pod, right? And then if you want to check out the website, again, if you just Google us, Living Corporate, or you can type it in the browser, living-corporate, please say the dash.com. We're also livingcorporate.co, livingcorporate.org, livingcorporate.tv, livingcorporate.net. We got all the Living Corporates except, you know it, livingcorporate.com, because Australia has livingcorporate.com, man.
That's crazy.
Ain't that crazy? Yeah, so listen, y'all. Appreciate y'all. Listen, if you have any questions, anything you want to learn more about change management, make sure that y'all contact Brian. I'm going to put all his contact information down in the show notes. Until next time, this has been Zach, and you've been talking to Brian Hampton, CEO and founder of ChangeNerd, a digital learning community for change management professionals. Till next time. Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.